And I asked you, did the client know? And I think you said, maybe not.
Maybe not.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
But really what it let me realize, and that, once again, going back to what's the eye on the ball, I think a lot of times lawyers are put in a weird situation, and it's kind of multiple of these concepts that you're talking about. Fear of new ideas.
Right.
Fear of upsetting the client.
Right.
Fear of conflict.
Right.
And interest in own pocketbook.
Right. And interest in winning and not losing.
Yeah. And
right.
But that made it a win. Going outside the box made that a win. Made that a win.
Yeah, that was a
and
huge
quite frankly, how much more money could you have charged if it would have gone to litigation?
I would have made a lot of money. This is, if Charlie didn't give the whole background on this case, but basically, it was a case where I was representing an institution that had fired a young woman, and
that had been there for 30 years, right?
She'd been there a long time, and she thought they'd done her wrong, and it turned out, after I had a really open conversation with her lawyer, this case was about dignity. It wasn't about money, it was about dignity. Right. And all her family was coming over for a big dinner on Saturday to her house.
And she got fired.
And she got fired, and she had been shamed. And I said, would it help any if a florist truck arrived at the house just when everybody was gathered and a big bouquet came in that said, thank you for your service?
Right.
Right. And it did. We resolved what would, because my client's marching orders, and I'm going to give the exact words, JB, we will pay when the Supreme Court of the United States of America turns down our petition for writ of certiorari. That's when we'll pay. Well, that was a lot of money for me. I could have made a lot of money taking this case to the Supreme Court, but it wouldn't have solved the problem.
Right. That's one thing is like that. That's one thing I think it is missing. The thing that I think it is missing is lawyers truly being able, we call it client control or client management. I'm not sure if that's the best way to put it.
I think that we need better words.
I think so as well. And you also teach client counseling, and I never took that class from you because I heard it was crap.
You were wrong. What you heard was wrong. It's actually the best class I teach.
I have heard that. What I think that and this goes back to that Patrick Lencioni 5 dysfunctions of a team.
Yeah.
We're talking about lack of trust, fear of conflict, inability to commit, avoidance of accountability, and inattention to results. Here's the way I think it shows up. At some point in time, someone told us that because you're the lawyer, that you have all the answers, or people ought to respect what you have to say. And it happened to me earlier in a practice, and I don't know how it did. I would have people come in, and I'm embarrassed to say that I said this to people, so please, don't look at me. We're all a work in progress. I remember clients paying me for a consult on whether it's domestic or whether it was criminal, and it would be an hour, and it'd be 55 minutes into it, and I wouldn't have been able to get a word across edgewise.
Right.
And I can remember a couple of times I got frustrated. I said, you're paying me money to talk to me, but you're not listening to anything that I'm having to say. You want to talk the whole time.
Yeah.
And what it did was shut them down. It shamed them, and it's shame, blame, and judgment. And that's the number one way to violate. What that does is it disempowers the client.
Well, it disempowers the client, but Charlie, there's a real problem in any system in which we're trying to help people. You don't have the rest of your life to hear their whole story. You have other things you have to do.
Right.
They have to pay you, so there's got to be a way that we can respect each other's role.
And you had said it so well beforehand that there's one part that they haven't been able to tell.
Right.
Like that's what I noticed, especially with the criminal and the domestic stuff, because everyone around them uses shame words. Shame words are need, should, got to, and have to.
Yeah.
And non-shame words are ought or could. Mm-hmm. And so if you can use non-shame words and talk, but most people are just like, well, you're such an idiot for doing that. Like you clearly only think about yourself. And the problem is all those things built off of assumption create like that. Now that becomes the litigation factor because now the person's mind says, well, I'm not like that. So that's the point of contention as opposed to let's talk about the real facts. But at some point in time, lawyers became convinced that because they were lawyers, that for the sake of being a lawyer, that everyone's going to listen to what they have to say.
Yeah, well, that's crazy.
It is.
And sometimes the lawyers think that.
Right. So what I've now found is if you can create the neurological safety, and then you build time to build the trust, and so that's establish rapport, let the client know that you love them and and actually fucking care about the problem that they have. If you come across as someone who doesn't care about the problem that's the most important problem to them, you will not get buy-in. And once you get that buy-in, then, but it takes healthy conflict to get a client to buy into something that they might not want to do that's extra work for them. And at the same point in time, tell them you can't promise results. Like that's the one thing with criminal, and I'm not sure if...
No, we can't promise results.